After some great weather, that's right, we had had some very enjoyable weather here in Durham, North Carolina for a while, but now it's starting to get a little cool on the outside. As a matter of fact, I just stepped outside a minute ago and it felt like it was probably around 50 degrees or something like that. So definitely starting to get cooler. But, the more important thing is that more and more people are apparently getting those vaccinations. So more and more things are happening in the sense of there seems to be more hope that folks will be able to get out and about and do more things. Unlike last year, since we know that pretty much all of last year we were stuck in the house as we've been dealing with this pandemic now for more than a year. And of course, dealing with a lot of other issues as well. And of course, it's impacted a lot of ways things are done and all of that. And even though things are improving and folks are getting the vaccinations, doesn't mean that things are always the best that they can be. As a matter of fact, I know that not that far away from where I'm at, Duke University, they were in the middle of a shelter in place order onto the campus because they were doing some things related to Russia's in terms of like fraternity life and all of that. And it seems like they had a spike in cases. I want to say it's like maybe about 200 students are in quarantine. So they decided that they would put a shelter in place order for the students on campus. And I know a lot of folks are very excited about the fact that they've got their stimulus check, yours truly included. So it means that they can definitely take care of some bills and some other things that are very much a necessity in life. So that's definitely some of the things that are going on in the world. And of course, I'm glad to have an amazing guest once again. So I'm going to bring in Ernest Sandifer, somebody that I met like some of the other guests through that wonderful platform called Potted. And he's got a book, and we'll be talking about his book. We're also going to be talking about some of his love, including the love of music and entertainment. So I'm going to bring Ernest in. And how you doing, Ernest? Glad to have you on here on the International Broadcast Media, which is a podcasting network that's got shows from places as far away as South Africa, Nigeria, definitely other places here in the United States like Oregon and California and a number of other places. So definitely trying to make some noise in the internet TV world and in the streaming podcast world. So definitely glad that you were able to join me here. I know one of the things I was going to ask you just really quickly, I definitely want to learn about the book, but I also know that you are a fan of music and a fan of a lot of different kinds of music. So I know yesterday, it's not been a while since I've watched a full one, but I pretty much watched all of the Grammys, and it was definitely a different kind of Grammys as they
Yeah.
were in the big auditorium. They were actually looked like on the outside of the Staples Center, and of course they were doing limited audience and all of that. But I was wondering what your thoughts were about the Grammys and your thoughts about just where the music industry is in general.
I didn't watch the Grammys. This is probably my second or third year without watching it. It's just award shows in general with me. Um, I guess they lost its luster. I just didn't necessarily feel the need to watch them. I did see clips of them. I'm on the internet like a lot of people, so there's people who share the clips and things of that nature. And yeah, it looked it looked nice for what it was. And I was like, it does look cool. Everyone's dressed nice and everything, and performances looked like it was grand. So that's something that I opted to watch a basketball game. I was like, still, I'm gonna watch this Celtics game. So while the Grammys was going on, but hey, I see what y'all doing. As far as the music industry and all that, I think that again, this is something that I do like how it seems as though more artists are being more of themselves and making the type of music that they like.
Right.
Self-expression is definitely something that's very important to me. So when I see music artists especially do that, I think that's great. As far as like just other aspects of the music industry, you hear stories all the time about artists complaining about labels, complaining about this, that, and the third. So I usually side with the artists. I'm not going to as if though I'm too knowledgeable about the struggles that they go through as an artist or the ins and out of record labels and this, that, and the third. But I tend to side more so with them. So if they're saying this is an issue, then I'm more so looking at it, and I still try to remain objective. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, if artist A is saying this is an issue, I'm gonna tend to side with artist A on this, and then I'll look into what the record labels are saying. But if it sounds more so of they're just being greedy, or maybe a contract wasn't fulfilled. I can understand that aspect of it. For a contract was made and it's not been fulfilled, and it's like, yeah, this contract's not the best. I wouldn't have signed it had I knew what I was getting into, but you still signed it, and you still have to uphold to it. So it's like I see both sides when it comes to those situations. But me, I'm just a music listener, so it's like I try to pay more attention to what is being said in the music and what the music sounds like.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've noticed about the music, and I'd love to know your thoughts about this as well,
Yeah,
is that I think I even saw some during the Grammys, is that definitely last year we saw more people using this as an opportunity to talk about their thoughts about everything from Black Lives Matter
yeah,
to climate change to definitely what they were going through, even with the pandemic and things of that nature. Because I know there was definitely one or two of the songs that dealt with Black Lives Matter. There was definitely a couple that touched on the pandemic and stay at home and the shelter in place and the other
yeah.
kinds of ways that folks were having to deal with their lifestyle and all of that. So, as a fan of music and as a fan of entertainment, is that something that you enjoy seeing? Do you enjoy seeing artists actually step out there and use the art form as a platform for addressing things that the greater society is concerned about?
When it's genuine, yes, I love it. I feel as though there are times where you can tell when it's just obviously a money ploy and it's a grab. And I feel a way about it because, again, these are real people's lives that you're essentially just making money from. And you can say the same thing about those who are genuine too. You can say, people have said that about Colin Kaepernick. They're like, well, he's making money from Nike and all these other, and just this movement. But I'm like, yeah, that's a side to it, but you can always tell when someone is being, at least with me, I can't speak for everybody else, but I feel as though I have a strong sense of who's being genuine about it and who isn't. Whether it's an athlete, whether it's an actor, a music artist, whoever, someone in the entertainment business, you can always tell when they're being genuine about it. And I think their actions do more so to speaking rather than whatever music they put out, whatever commercial they whatever advertisement, their actions outside of it will tell you if they're actually being genuine. You can also look at past actions as well and make that assessment and say, okay, in the past they have been, vocal about this. They have mentioned this in interviews, and they might not be known interviews, or maybe the interviewer didn't necessarily pinpoint that aspect of it because that wasn't the more so sexy topic at the time. But it's like just to answer your question, when it's done genuinely, whether I think it sounds great or not, especially if it sounds great, I'm like, I really really love it. But if it's done in it to send off a genuine message, and that artist, because they're people at the end of the day, people tend to forget that they're people at the end of the day, they have thoughts and feelings of themselves. So if they really believe in that, I'm 100% with them. um, Even for those who I feel as though they're not being as genuine, I think the good thing about it is they are at least exposing people to this information, or at least people who look up to those artists are looking at them and saying, wow, I'm just going to throw a name out there. Jay-Z, he believes in this, and maybe I should start believing in this. Maybe I should start looking into this, that, and the third. Whether I personally feel as though that person is genuine or not, I look at that and say, okay, well, at least somebody who didn't really care about social issues like that before, it seems as though now they care because someone else that they look up to is showing that they care about it. Now, I wish that person was genuine about it, but at least it's exposing people. It's kind of like it's one of those good unintended consequences to doing something like that. Like, you're just doing this for the money, but you're unintentionally inspiring some people to actually learn and keep their, get something. So yeah, that's my
Yeah, that
thoughts
makes
on
a
it.
lot of sense. Now, Ernie, one of the other things I was curious about is I know that you've definitely done, and we'll get into the book in a little bit, but you've definitely been a blogger yourself. You've definitely done podcasting and the YouTube content creation. So,
Yeah.
at what age did you first get into the media field, and what brought you into it? Was it something that you started doing when you were a teenager, or was it something that came later on, like in your college years? Or at what point did you decide that you were going to pursue this? And is this something that you're pursuing on a regular basis? And what do you see as some of the highlights of it, as also some of the pitfalls?
So I started doing this. I want to say maybe like sophomore or junior year of high school. This was more so, well, it was junior year of high school. So I started blogging. I used to just blog on Tumblr a lot. Before that, I was on Facebook just saying things and stuff. And someone in high school with was like, you should start your own blog. And I'm like, yeah, I do enjoy writing. I just don't know how to start it. And then he told me about the site Tumblr. So I started just writing there. Um, and then YouTube, it was more so me just seeing things that I've always wanted to talk about, whether it be about politics or entertainment business or anything really. And I was like, well, you know what? It's free to start a YouTube channel. You know, I'm a broke teenager, so I got a camera though. So let me just start this and see where it goes. So I again, it started junior year of high school. I started actually like taking it more so seriously, probably like freshman year of college.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, as far as my writing go, I all throughout, it wasn't until the end of sophomore year of college, I decided let's continue on this path of a writer. I was in school for psychology, and
Mm-hmm.
as much as I liked it, it wasn't a passion of mine. And my passion has always been writing. It's been a passion of mine ever since the fifth grade. But you know, you're told that keep that as a hobby or keep that as a plan B because you should be a doctor, a lawyer, or something that pays. And since psychology was that thing that at least brought me some interest, I was like, let me just go into the field of psychology. But again, I didn't want to spend so many years getting a degree in that, and I wasn't passionate about it, and it just got to the point where I started to value my happiness and my passions more so than what other people said, or at least trying to impress other people. Um, I wanted to more so impress myself. So that's when I started getting into reading. Some of the pitfalls of just being in this space. If we're talking about the writing, I didn't publish my first book until I was 25, and the book that I just recently published is actually my second published book. Um, but some people don't necessarily take, unfortunately, Black writers seriously if they're not, writing about or always writing about specific Black topics, or anything that they feel as though we should write about, or if we weren't like birthed out the womb writing. So it's like, oh, just knowing that we wanted to be a writer when we were a kid or something. I do remember as a young little boy just writing in journals and things of that nature. But I just did it because that was something that I was told I could do
Mm-hmm.
as an outlet. And I wasn't really uh, a vocal person, so I would write a lot of my thoughts out anyways. But again, it's just over time that was something that I had to build up to understand that this is a passion of mine. So that's kind of some of the pitfalls. Really, just people not taking you seriously because they have this mode and categorization of what it means to be a writer. And if you are this type of person, whatever your demographic is, then you have to write about this, or you have to do this, that, and the third. And if you don't fit that, then it's, well, there's you're not really a writer or whatever they think. And it's just like, well, I'm just going to continue to do what I'm doing. Now, as far as like, sorry, you had a
I was
question?
going to say, I want to hear more about that and everything, but it seems to me like you're almost saying that in some ways, as a writer, they almost kind of like want you to be the next Ernest Jerome Dickey or the next Omar Tyree. And if you're not writing in that motive, then they're not necessarily going to think that you're a writer in the true sense, because it's not a urban writer, and they probably think that all
Mm,
African American writers have to write in that style, whether it's Omar or Eric or a number of others that have been out there doing this for a number of years.
exactly that, and just the various topics they talk about as well. And it's like I tell people all the time, my books come from dreams I've had. So it's like I don't always dream in the same topic. It's just like I've if it's a dream and the story came from a dream and I'm like, yo, this could be turned into a story. I'm going to do my best to turn it into a story. Now, whether if it's like your categorization of what is a writing or whatever, I mean, that's up to the person. I understand subjectivity is a thing, and if somebody says this is not something that interests me because I can't personally identify with it, that's perfectly fine. But to completely just write me off as someone not a writer or not an author or whatever because I don't look the part or I don't, for whatever qualifications you have for that, yeah, I just think it's stupid. Um, but other than that, I've met some really good, great writers and great people in general who was interested in what I've had to say, and you know, um, not that I needed their validation, because again,
Mhm.
I always had my own validation about that, but it still is a good thing to see other people saying, you know what, never mind what those other people are saying. I like your stuff, and you're a great writer. Whether it's a book or whether you're blog writing and this, that, and the third. So that makes me feel good. Um, as far as just content creation on YouTube and just content creation in general, it's been up and down for me. I will say the best part about it is the self expression, being
Mhm.
able to have your own avenue, whether it be doing a podcast, YouTube channel, or whatever, and being able to express yourself and to say the things that you want to say, and just to put your thoughts out there, especially if you're someone who just wants to put your thoughts out there and put yourself out there in general. I'm not trying to be some thought leader or whatever. I feel as though I got to make that clear because people tend to, when they hear individuals with strong opinions or at least opinions that they deem are different from everybody else, then that person is trying to indoctrinate them to some point or trying to be some thought leader. And I can't speak for everyone else who does that, but I know that that's not what I want to do. That's not what I'm trying to do. um, if someone were to say, well, you made me think differently about this, that, and the third, I would still challenge them to look on the opposite side and then come up with their assessment. If their assessment still is alongside with what I have to say, cool. If not, that's also fine as well. But just, I would have to say, just with both writing and just content creation, um, some of the troubles that I've come across is just people trying to dictate who you are, what you can
Mhm.
say, what you can't say, and in a sense censor you or try to mold you into something, or changing your message and making it either more palatable for them or making it something that is totally different from what your message is or what you even said. And even with clarifying it, they are, no, you said this and it's not exactly what I've been hearing, it's not exactly what I've been told, it's not exactly what I've thought, so therefore it's I am I'm saying that something different. So that's pretty much some of the pitfalls that I've had, but like I said, I enjoy it for the most part.
Yeah, sounds like you're really enjoying it and really having a good time with it and everything. I know one of the other things that we've talked about on this platform as well as just on different shows that I've appeared on, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Is it does seem like there's a lot more youth voices out there, and when I say youth voices, I'm thinking like the under 35 set and all of that, and a lot of that youth voice is also being very active in what they're saying and not holding back any punches. So I know
Yeah.
one of the things that I've really admired about a lot of the youth voices out there is that they are very forthright in their attitudes, but they are also very much. I think that I've made the argument that I've also seen a lot more. I won't say diversity, but definitely more openness to different views. There's a lot more of
Mhm.
our youth that are open to having conversations with people that might be outside of their race, outside of their orientation, outside of their whatever lifestyles, and not necessarily trying to make a judgment on those people. Whereas some
Yeah.
of the earlier folks in my generation, and I'm in my late 50s, and definitely in my parents' generation, and for sure their grandparents' generation, was oftentimes, make judgments if you weren't a member of their church crowd or not a member of whatever their crowd was. and everything of that nature. Whereas it seems to me that a lot of our current youth are a lot more open-minded. I'll put it that way. And I was just wondering, is that a misconception on my part, or as a member of that generation, do you think that y'all are more open-minded, possibly because of what y'all have been through? I mean, y'all have already gone through Black Lives Matter. Y'all have now gone through a pandemic, and y'all have gone through a lot just in a short time frame. But it does seem that I see more young folks being very open-minded.
Yeah, I won't say it's a misjudgment at all. I mean, I have people within my generation who are, very close-minded and things of that nature. So it's not like 100% of my generation is open-minded, but that's with every other generation. And I feel as though the forthrightness and the call to action and all of that, if it weren't for your generation and other generations, I don't think we would be as brave as we were. I look up to the people who, my people who are my father's age, my mother's age. I look up to, people during the civil rights era, and I look at what they were doing, and how they reacted and just their mindsets and their behaviors. And I'm like, that's exactly how this generation should be. I think there's a lot of downfalls to millennials, and Gen X's, I believe, is the ones under after me. But yeah, I think there's a lot we can still learn from the older generation, just as much as there's a lot about the open-mindedness and things of that nature that older people can learn from my generation and the younger generation as well. So just to answer your question, yeah, I think for the most part there is more so of an open-minded culture that the millennial generation has set the tone for, not only in this nation but in other countries as well. But there's still a lot of work to do. We're not perfect. We're far from it. There's still a lot of learning we have to do, even as, soon to be 30-year-olds such as myself and people who might be a few years younger, a few years older. So we definitely still need the older generation to learn these things from.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I definitely think that that's what needs to have more of that conversation, intergenerational conversations. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that I admire sometimes about some of our Spanish brethren, as well as some of our Asian brethren, is that they seem to be more open to having that cross generational conversation, and then sometimes we'll have 3 or 4 generations living in the same household. And I know that that used to be the case with our societies way back when, but we've pulled more and more away from that. But I do know that definitely you might see 3 or 4 generations living in a Latin American house, and definitely three
Yeah.
or four in some of the Pakistani and Asian cultures, and definitely Indian and a couple of those other ones. So definitely that seems to be something that we can learn more
Yeah.
from in terms of other senses and everything. Now, in terms of your blog, what have been some of the more interesting blogs that you have written, and where can folks find the blog? And what was your thoughts about the last election, and how are you feeling? And I know these are all kind of coming at you fast and furious, so you
I
can take it
understand.
you can take it one at a time. But how are you feeling about the current administration in its first less than 100 days?
Um, I, to be honest with you, I don't mess with them. I don't. It's not like I'm a fan of the last administration as well. I have to say that because or even people in my generation, we're all guilty of this. If you say you're against one, then people assume you're for the other. And it's like, no, you can be against both. And there are some times where you can be for both. This is not one of those times for me. It's there. I know it's been less than 100 days, or at least close to less than 100 days. Um, but whether it's 100 days in, 90 days in, 97 days in, I think that the things that could have been done, like with the last relief package, although there have been great things to happen for the American people in it, I'm a person where if I say I'm going to do something for a group of people in general, I'm going to try my hardest to do it. If I can't do it, I'm not going to make excuses as to somebody's in a way, some random parliamentarians in a way, or somebody of the same party said they don't agree with it. Although I have more of a say so than a Joe Manchin. so if I really wanted $15 minimum wage to pass, that could be something that I can get passed because I'm the president and Joe Manchin is just he's not the president. So that's it. So I'm like, how is Joe Manchin the president and Joe Biden isn't? But as far as just my thoughts on the current politics and past politics in general, um, I find myself more so voting either third party or just if I am voting for one of the major two parties, I usually go based off of the policies. Now, the Republicans haven't had a policy that I supported in God only knows how long. Democrats in general, there are a few members where I look at them like I look at the Nina Turners, I look at the Bernie Sanders, I look at members of the Progressive Caucus. I look at members of what they call the Squad, and I see the luster in all of that, especially with Nina Turner. I really love Nina Turner. I really love I was really big on Bernie Sanders. I will say my feelings about him have, dwindled down a bit, but I do love seeing what he stands for and I do love seeing that. And I'm not asking for perfection from Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or the Democrats or the Republicans for that matter. I'm not asking for perfection out of anybody because I as much as I try to make things perfect for myself, I know I can't do it. So I'm not going to expect perfection from anybody and then hold myself to a lesser standard. But within that same light, if I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard and say, okay, if I were in these seats, if I was in power, and I know some people are going to say it's easier said than done, but at the same time, as I was going back to, I'll call it back to the motives, if someone's genuine about something or not, at least show that you care, at least put up a fight, one that actually makes sense and one that, even if you did lose the fight, I can look and say, okay, there was actually something in the way of all of this, not some random person with no power or at least less power than the president of the United States, getting in the way of why something couldn't be passed, something that he said he wanted to be passed. And I understand that, they're saying that they're still fighting for it. And my thing is words, words, words. Everyone could just say words, but if they're not backed by action, once again, they're simply just words. I've never really been somebody who paid more so attention to words. I pay more so attention to actions. All these words, you can say all the nice things. You can say, I want you to have free healthcare. I think your student debt should be forgiven. I think you should make at minimum 15 an hour. I think that you should get $2,000. And again, I'm glad that people got because that money, whether it's enough or not, to some folks, it is helping people out in ways that I can only imagine, in ways that I probably that I know I don't even know, because I don't know how everybody is living. I don't know everybody's living situation. I only know mine. And that money, if I would have get a check, it would have helped me out tremendously. But it's just, my big thing is I want people to hold these individuals accountable and to their word and actually do so, and not take the platitudes and not just accept crumbs and be happy with it. Again, I'm not asking for perfection from any politician and anybody, but what I do want is power that they can actually exert, be used, and not bail out people who clearly don't need it. I mean, during the pandemic, the billionaires became trillionaires because trillions was just passed out to them, and all these other people got bailed out, and all these other situations are happening before the 99% who actually need it. Yeah, that stuff bothers me, and it doesn't matter who's in charge. Granted, that was going on when Trump was in charge, but even prior to Trump, there was rich was still getting bailed out, and I still had a problem with it. And so it really doesn't matter who's in charge. I feel as though I have to be vocal about these things because I'm an American too. I live in this country as well. So these things affect me. Now, whether I am treated the same as others, whether I am, and I mean, if we're talking about being an American, it is my right to vocalize these things. So why not? But it's not. Again, I don't say these things to be controversial. I don't say these things to 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 be combative or I I always say this either during the blog, podcast, YouTube video. When I make a prediction or I say, "Well, I think this is going to happen," or I have whatever I say,
Mhm.
and I don't want to be right about it, I always say, "I hope I'm wrong about this. I want wrong about this." And when I'm not proven wrong, I'm upset that I was proven right. So this has zero to do with some ego thing and me wanting to be right about some things. It has everything to do with me just caring about myself, caring about my family, caring about the American people, and wanting better for all of us.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the other things I know that I've had this conversation with some of my other guests about, and I was just wondering your thoughts about it, is um, how do you think we're doing as a people with race relations? Because I know that definitely we saw the storming of the Capitol right before the new administration came
Yeah,
on and everything, and we've definitely seen still some of the things going on with our youth and our police. And we know that a lot of folks. I mean, I just have my two nephews who are 11 and 12, about to be 12 and 13 this year and everything in August. But I don't have any kids of my own. But I do have friends with kids, some that are adult kids and some that are still kids in that teenage or young adult age. And they definitely always talk about that conversation that still has to be had even in 2021. So I was wondering your thoughts about that, where you think we are. I don't know if you have any kids yet yourself, or if you do, if you're expecting to, if you have don't have kids and you will have kids, that you're going to have that conversation yourself. But I was just wondering your thoughts about the talk, as it's oftentimes referred to, and just race relations in general.
yeah. I don't have kids, but I know if I do, that talk is definitely going to need to be had. You can't escape it if you are black here in America, all over the world, really. But I can only speak from a black American experience. So, as a black American, that is definitely a talk that needs to be had. So, yeah, if I were to have kids or whatever, that is definitely a talk. As far as my thoughts on race relations here in America, again, I hate to sound like a Debbie Downer and everything, but I just call things how I see them. They haven't gotten better, at least not better to the point to where people, I guess, back in the 60s and 70s, even 50s and before, thought it would be in the future being now, 2021, 2020, and all that. So it's gotten, yeah, things have gotten better, and I can realize the things that have been working and have gotten better. But we've clearly seen police relations with black people have not gotten better at all. I don't care if it's, well, they're not just coming in our neighborhoods anymore and beating us all day. Now they're doing it just on a random Tuesday now instead of every day of the week. That's not better to me. Whether it's one day a week or 7 days a week, that's not better. um that's something that's still an issue. And as far as with the storm of the Capitol, and yeah, you have people who claim to be red-blooded Americans and love America and wanted, and they were doing it because of a fair trial and everything. Or they wanted fairness within the political system. Now, that's one thing. I'm not a Biden supporter, but I will not say that he stole the election. He won. I'll be the first to acknowledge, and I'm pretty sure I was like the first to acknowledge he won. He won fair and square. Whether you like it or not, that's definitely on the individual. But he won fair and square, and I'm not saying that as someone who voted for Trump either, because I didn't. But he won fair and square, and what they were doing, trying to do, and what they wanted to do is definitely something that I did not support. It was funny. I just had a conversation with someone about that a couple weeks ago. If there are reasons for why they did it, let's just say they were just like pissed off with America and how the handling of the coronavirus, and they wanted to go there and express themselves, I wouldn't have a problem with them storming the Capitol like that. But the reason they did so was because they basically just wanted to overturn the election results, and that's the opposite of what it means to be American. You know, for the same people who claim to be about American pride and all this other stuff. So that hypocrisy did not surprise me. It was just, that's not something I could get behind. But yeah, you have people of that base who are severely racist. And um, not that I'm saying that they're not to be worried about, or we shouldn't worry about them. Um, I just look at them and I say, well, that's your ignorance and that is your fault. And I want to, if there's a discussion that I don't even honestly try to talk to them, but there are a few who, you know, saw videos or whatever and they wanted to have a discussion. And what I mean by discussion is what they really want to do is try to intimidate me into not speaking anymore. But yeah, I'm more so worried about the systemic racism because at the end of the day, one of these Confederate flag flying people could ride up and down the neighborhood and do whatever. But the system is, let's just say me and that individual get into it and I defend myself the same way that any American has the right to defend themselves, but I still end up getting in trouble for it. Meanwhile, if the roles were reversed and I were to come on their property or harm them wherever they are and they stood their ground and they defended themselves and they got off and basically murdering me or harming me, that's where that's where I feel as though the focus should be. Because again, roles were reversed. I'm in a situation where I'm defending myself because they're threatening me, and if something happens and I'm in trouble, they'll come up with every reason as to why. Well, you live in Massachusetts and Massachusetts guns law is this, but or you move 2 inches away from your house and 2 feet 2 blocks away from your house, so you wasn't in danger anymore, or something. I don't know. They'll think of something. You was out there in your socks and you clearly was ready to leave the house because you look like you're dressed to leave. So it looked like you was leaving the house to cause some trouble anyway. You know. So that's the stuff where it's like the double standards and things of that nature. Back to the storm. Yeah, of course, if it was a bunch of black people who did that, we wouldn't have made it inside.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So it's like I understand the double standards. I understand the the uh, the obvious racism that is there. And like I said, we haven't gotten better. We there have been strides that have been made, and again, I can acknowledge all of that. But as a nation, we still haven't gotten better, and we will not get better until we address the real problem, um, which is the systemic racism. And the very people who benefit from this divide in the first place, they're not willing to give up that power. They're not willing to admit, yes, I've been profiting, or we've been profiting from this divide. They're not going to do that. They're going to their graves with that information, and then they're leaving their inheritance to. They're getting that information and getting that inheritance, and they're not going to come out very rarely. Let me just put it that way, because there might be some that will have a conscience and a soul and say this is wrong, and I want to expose this, to everybody. Because if we're really all one nation, we're really all together, and we're really supposed to be, all for one and one for all, we can't have this divide. And even if that means that at the detriment to my inheritance, I'm willing to sacrifice all of that for the greater good. Maybe that could happen. Maybe that's just a story of mine. But like at the end of the day, like it's not a situation that's going to get better unless the people who benefit from it, whether they benefit from it via profiting or benefit from it because they're not necessarily affected by systematic racism, unless they do something about it, that's when the relations are going to get better. But like I said before, I can acknowledge the strides that are being made every single day to help combat that. And I am happy to be able to see those strides being made.
Yeah, and speaking of those strategies being made and everything, well, two things. One, I was wondering, do you think that as more and more of certain other societies stack up on guns and everything else, that that's something that we as a minority community need to be thinking about as well? Because I can tell you that I've definitely had some friends of mine that have said that, that they're not above needing to realize that they might need some pistols and some weapons of their own if certain
Yeah.
other parts of this society are going to have weapons in their hands. But I was wondering your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. I can kind of see where your friends are coming from. I know not everybody is into guns. Um, myself am a gun lover. I don't own any, but I can understand the fear. They are scary things, you know. Like as much as I love them, I can see why people are have this hate for them and just don't like them. I can understand that. Um, but I do understand where people like your friends where they're coming from. I in the perfect world, I want to say no. I still want to say no because I don't necessarily like to be super extreme on anything. I don't like to be an extremist on, one side, even if I support it, such as, I support, people having a right to bear arms, but I don't think that we should. One, I don't think we should own like should be able to own every single gun that is out there. Some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff actually is really insane and no human being should have it. But at the same time, I don't want to have so much of a fear to where I feel as though I need all that stuff in order to protect myself, protect my family, protect my people. Um, you know, but it's a sad reality, and I feel as though instead of looking at people, because I know people who will look at your friends and say they're crazy, they're paranoid, and it's like no, they have a point when they think this way and they feel this way, and I think we should attack more so why they feel this way. There's a historical fact as to why they feel this way. Some of these people lived long enough to see their neighborhoods be destroyed by the Klan, by the police, by America themselves. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna have that fear, and if you've never been through anything like that, you can't call somebody crazy because or paranoid or whatever because that's what they experience, that's what they feel, or if even if they didn't experience it, but they know of people who did, or they have family members who have. You look at the history that went down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you see that, and it's like, how can you not look at people who are like, yeah, we need to get as many guns as possible, and not, how can you look at that and say, well, they're insane. I mean, granted, a bomb was dropped on them, so it doesn't necessarily matter how many guns they had. They couldn't have stopped that bomb. But at the same time, as I stated before, when you have uh, right-wing militia groups or racist groups or neo-Nazi groups and come into neighborhoods knowing that these people are not armed people, they're not protected in any way, and knowing they can get away with it because the police force is on their side as well. The police force is by their side helping them destroy these neighborhoods. I get where some people can look at the idea and say that is extreme because, as I was saying before, strides have been made, and one of those strides is being able to uh, actually criminalize people who feel as though they can get away with just coming into a black neighborhood and blowing it up and bombing black churches. But then you see situations like with a Dylan Roof who shot up a black church, and yes, he's still locked up, and I believe he's locked up for life if I'm not mistaken. Um, you have people who still have those fears, and you have people who say, well, if one of them people, if the pastor had a gun or one of those churchgoers had a gun, maybe they would have saved a life or two or more if they would have shot back at Dylan Roof. So it's one of those slippery slope situations. I don't want to necessarily say, yeah, we should definitely get all the guns that we can get our hands on, and we need to be super prepared. But I don't want to not tell people not to protect themselves in any way they feel possible. And I feel as though that's the best advice I can give to people when asked that question. do whatever you feel you're comfortable doing in protecting yourself. Just protect yourself. Whether that be getting a gun or some other form of protection, uh, do that. Because, like I said, I know not everybody is comfortable around guns, and that's something that I know a lot of people who don't like guns. I know a few people who do. I mean, like I said, I myself, I do like guns, but I don't. I can see why somebody would be fearful of them, and I'm very, very careful around them when I do use them or when I am around them, because they're not something to just be playing with, and they're not something to take lightly at all.
And speaking of things not to be taken lightly and just kind of changing the topic just slightly and everything, but there's also been a very big conversation in our community about definitely the pandemic, the coronavirus, and the
Mm,
vaccination. We actually had one of our shows here, the Producers Roundtable, which I do after my friend Zach's Funk Music with Zach show and everything. And we had different folks on, and some of them were actually in the same generation as you. One of the gentlemen is actually a musician. I want to say he might be in his early 30s or maybe late 20s, but he was saying that he had gotten his vaccinate. I mean, he had had the coronavirus, and I think he said he had had the vaccination. But his sister, who was also on the show and is very much of a healthy living kind of person, was
yeah.
very adamant that she was not going to be taking the
Mm,
vaccination. And part of that was because of kind of the Tulsa experiments and some of the other things that have happened in our community. So she was definitely saying, we needed to do more with our vitamins and more with our natural health, homeopathic kind of ways of
yeah.
combating this virus and everything. So, as a young person, definitely, anytime you get somebody that's got a blog, and whether you want to be considered that or not, a lot of times you wind up being somewhat of a thought leader and everything. So, that being
Yeah.
said, as one that is sometimes perceived that way, what is your thoughts on the pandemic and the vaccinations and how we're handling the current pandemic? I mean, you're definitely far down the list unless you're in the medical field, and I don't know whether you are or aren't, but unless you're in there by age, you're probably like in maybe group 4 or group 5 or group 6,
Yeah.
maybe even so far down the list and everything. But what are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that, even for like your parents and for your grandparents if they're still living?
Yeah. As far as the pandemic, it's very real. For those who want to know that, yeah, I'm not one of those who's going to deny the severity of this. I think this is very real. I know people who've gotten it, not family members, but I've had friends who've had it. A friend of mine's wife and their B girl got it. They both survived and everything. But I know people who've had it. Um, and it's very real. It's a real thing. Even if I didn't know anybody, I would not say, "Well, I don't know anybody who has it, so I'm not." No, it's stupid, because it's like you can say, "I don't know anybody who has one arm." That means everyone who has one arm is they're lying. They don't really have one arm, you know. So um, it's very real. As far as like my stance on the handling of the situation, like I said, the last administration did a horrible job. I mean, he did a horrible job on a lot of things, but he definitely did a horrible job on handling this country in general. Did a horrible job on handling the pandemic. You lock everybody down, and I work from home. I'm a writer, so it's like I didn't necessarily need to leave the house to do my job. So that was a blessing there. But you have family members who are essential workers, and who work outside the home, and they couldn't get paid. It just like a lot of other people who worked outside the home. They couldn't get paid for the first few months because of the lockdowns. And the country, again, you didn't necessarily do anything. You gave people a $1,200 check months down the line. And again, if this was a recurring $1,200 check ever since the beginning of the lockdown, I would actually have no problem with that. I'd be 100% on board with at least that, handling that aspect, the financial aspect of it. But again, this country decided to be more so greedy and everything. So it's f the American people. Let's get help the rich people get rich first, because with the businesses being shut down, business people weren't able to make money. The billionaires weren't able to make money. And although a billionaire losing money is still way better off than someone like myself or anybody else who's not that losing money. Yeah, it was a terrible job. I was saying this the other day as well. I give Trump's handling of the coronavirus a straight up F. Like he failed. He failed the nation. He failed his base, especially. A lot of his base are poor people who definitely needed uh, assistance. And all he did was he sent boxes of food to people's houses. Every once a month or so. And I'm like, okay, that bread, that milk is going to go out. It's going to expire sometime. And these people need real change. Whether I agreed with their political stances or not, these people actually need some tangible changes, just as much as people I agree with need those tangible changes as well. So again, totally bad job. So as far as the vaccinations go, I don't think there's ever, well, let me not say there will ever be another Tuskegee, but I don't think that this country is 100% bold enough to do something like that. Because in order to do that, you have to have 100% trust, or at least close to it, of um, either one community or the American people. Um, both parties, both political parties, their approval ratings, their trust ratings basically have dwindled down ever since 2008 or maybe 2016, I believe. But it's been a while since Americans in general have trusted the system. If you're taking like just general polls and asking people, or even if you're not like putting a camera in their face and they're not going to give you their political answer and give you their real answer, they're going to tell you they don't necessarily have that much trust or any trust within the government. But some people aren't like myself. They're not going to vocalize that distrust because of the fear of whatever can happen. And I understand that. And I don't expect people to step outside of their comfort zones and do things that they necessarily don't feel comfortable doing, or saying things they don't feel comfortable saying out loud or whatever. So with that being said, I don't think a Tuskegee thing would happen, but I don't think the vaccines are 100%. I think depending on what the vaccine is. Now, Pfizer, I've heard a lot of, and I still hear a lot of bad things about that vaccine. And I would not suggest anybody get that vaccine. I forgot when I first heard things about Moderna. I'm hearing some bad things about Moderna now, but when I first heard about Moderna back in the summer of 2020, I was hearing a lot of good things about it. And with that being said, it's like, well, if I can get that vaccine, I will get that vaccine. Now I am 50-50 on it, but before I was at least 70% sure that I was getting that one. I'm 100% sure I'm not getting Pfizer, and I'm not in the medical field or whatever. So, and I don't have symptoms. I've even tried calling like in my local hospitals, like, can I get it? Or am I eligible? And they're like, if you don't have symptoms, which I don't, if you aren't of the age range, then as you were saying, I'm going to have to wait some time now to get it. But I was saying that around May, I think it will be accessible for everybody. So
Mhm.
people who are of my age range, maybe we can get it then. But only time would tell. As far as the sister who was saying the whole like holistic thing, I'm on the side with her definitely, because I do think that we need to look more into the holistic side of science. Now, I'm not going to say we should do away with more so of what they call modern science or whatever, right? Because I do think vaccines, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I do think that if it weren't for certain vaccines that did kill off deadly viruses in the past, um, we wouldn't be here, honestly, or at least America, this world in general, would not be as it wouldn't be so many people in the world. So I understand the beauty and the advances that modern science has made, not just in this country, but all over the world in general. So I don't want to completely write it off. But when people completely write off holistic science or holistic healing, yeah, I feel as though I need to go and bat for it, because um, how can you then tell it's not as hard as people are making it seem. It's eat the right foods, take care of yourself, um, And if you're a mainstream doctor, right, it's telling you eat your fruits and vegetables, it will make your body feel good. You believe them, but then when you have, a sister or or someone like myself or Dr. Sebi would say the same thing, and it's he don't know what he's talking about. Y'all don't know what y'all talking about. Y'all. And it's like your doctor essentially says the same thing. The only difference is your doctor would then prescribe you a pill to take, and we won't,
Right.
or we won't suggest, but it's literally they're saying the same thing. And there are some mainstream doctors who will say there's scientific based fact that will back up the more holistic side of healing. I don't think someone should take that route if they ended up getting COVID, because I myself, as someone, and maybe someone could present that information to me, please, if you have it. But I haven't seen any evidence saying that there is like a holistic cure or prevention to COVID-19. So I still am going to walk outside with my mask on. I'm still going to walk outside. I wear gloves and a mask. I know a mask is permitted, but just to be extra cautious, I wear a glove and a mask, and I have hand sanitizer. So it's like I'm still going to be cautious about it, but understand that there is a side to it, that I feel as though we need to be more cognizant of. One of the great things that I saw a couple months back, once again, was this focus on vitamin D.
Hmm.
And I really loved it, seeing that, especially within the mainstream, because I'm like, wow, this is something that I've been telling people, and people think, well, where can I get it? Where can I get vitamin D? Go outside. You get some sun exposure. You can get that.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying, once again, like, you go outside and you're going to be cured of the coronavirus. But even when I had a professional, because I had at the beginning of this pandemic, I had someone actually in the medical field on my podcast talking about it, and he was saying the same thing. He was saying, obviously, you don't want to go outside without a mask and just congregate with people, and just because the sun is out and the UV rays are high means that you and none of those people are going to get the virus. But what you also want to be mindful of is vitamin D. The research has shown that it not only helps fight off the like something about it, it helps fight off the virus, and it makes like your immune system stronger to fight off the virus. So if you were to be exposed to it, you have a better chance at finding it off, basically, or at least not getting it. But it's just better for you in general, and as far as not even just with the coronavirus, but with other illnesses and viruses. So I think a healthy balance at the end of the day of both is what I would like to see more. I understand that some people are going to choose a side regardless. They're going to choose the holistic side. They're going to choose the more so mainstream side. And I respect that, but let that be a choice, and let's not shut down either side and then tell people, they don't have a choice, or feel threatened for some reason because they choose the opposing choice, or tell somebody they're being stupid because they're choosing to look at both sides and say, okay, I can see some good on this side, good from the other side, or not so good from this side and not so good on the other side as well. So
Now, that makes a lot
again,
of
I'm
sense.
still, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that makes a lot of sense. One thing that I was going to ask, just along a similar line, but one of our founders here of the International Broadcast Media, and I can't
Mm,
remember whether it's Nick Palveda or Kim Calhoun, they're the two primary founders and everything. But one of the things they talk about oftentimes is the fact that they feel that we have a 18th century model of education that we're using in the 21st century, meaning that we're not really
right.
teaching the kind of ways that we should be teaching. We're still teaching back in that 18th century model and everything. And I would
Right.
argue that they are probably very much correct and all of that. But I also think that it possibly could even get, in some ways, worse as more and more people are going to have to get into this hybrid model where part of the teaching will go on at home and part of it will go
Mm,
on in the school system. I know that here in Durham, I think that some of our elementary school kids today, we're going back to the schoolroom for the first time, possibly, I think, in about a year or so. But I was just wondering, as
mm,
somebody that is a youth that has gone through both the the grade school system, but also the college system. What are your views on education, and where do you think we are in the education system, and where would you like us to be in the education system going forward?
I think that we definitely need to do better within the education system, but I don't think that we're doing a terrible job. Um, you know, we do need to be more up to date with our education in general, whether it be education within the school system and outside as well. Because it doesn't make sense if we're still on the I guess educational mindset of the 18th century, yet we're in the 21st century. Yeah, that's not it's not a good thing to be that behind, you know.
Right.
Um, so um, as far as just in general, um, we do still need to stress the importance of education, regardless of whether we're behind or not. I think if you stress the importance of it, um, time and time again, and this is something I've actually recently had to learn, because I used to be, not that I was so anti-education, I was like, F school, this, that, and the third, but it got to the point where there was some point in my life where I just felt it all was pointless based off of just my college experience. And I had to learn to, maybe there were certain things, it wasn't always 100% my fault, but there were certain things I could have done better to make that experience better, to shape my view on the education system in general. And two, simply because I feel that way about me does not mean that I should tack on that same mindset about everybody else. Because when I look at it on the grand scheme of things, this is it's important, at the grade school level, at the college level, whatever level. This hybrid learning, I feel for every parent out there who has to uh, do be the teacher and be the parent. Um, Again, I can't speak from experience, but I believe it's a hard job. I want to commend all the parents out there who are doing it. I remember when this pandemic first started. I used to work within the school system, so I have a lot of sensitivity toward not only kids but just parents in general. So when the pandemic first started, my initial thought wasn't, "Oh my God, I'm going to get the virus." It was, "What's going to happen to the kids? Like what's their future going to be like?" Because I've never experienced anything. I've had the longest I've been out of school is due to like snowstorms and stuff. We get horrible snowstorms out here in New England. So it's like, yeah, like when we've been out of school for a long time, it's because we literally leave our houses because we're blocked in by snow. But I'd take a snowstorm, or if I was a kid, at least I'd take a snowstorm over a deadly virus any day. You know,
Good.
um, so it's just I felt for them, and I still feel for them. I don't know what the schools. I live like right across the street from the school, and that place has been a ghost town for, I want to say, over a year now. That's crazy, because they should be in school right now. And I think they're homeschooling. I think I've seen probably one time in September they tried to go back, but maybe an outbreak happened. Maybe parents didn't feel comfortable sending their child there. I'm not really too sure, 100% too sure what happened, but you know, it went from one school bus a day to zero, back to zero school buses. So it's that type of stuff. To me, it's alarming because, again, you have parents who have to work. Many people who are single parents, they have to go to work. They're not necessarily getting, either unemployment isn't enough or it's ran out. Um, and they have to make money to be able to not only teach this child, but to help raise the child and feed the child and take care of the child. Um, as far as the education system and what should be improved upon with it, again, more so, um, of a traditional, like today's learning, basically, not
Right.
of yesteryears and centuries ago. Sure, we should always learn about the history, but what's the point in learning about history if you're not going to learn from it, or at least learn from it in both good and bad ways? Look at what worked in the past, and if we want to either continue doing it and improve upon it, that's great. But if something clearly has shown for centuries that it's not working, why are we continuing to do it? It makes zero sense to me to continue to do a certain method of learning, especially for kids with special needs and IEPs and stuff. Um, if there's a way of learning that is clearly not working for that child, as someone speaking from experience, that's only detrimenting their education, and that's really going to play, and that also played a damper in just my thoughts on the education system, or former thoughts on the education system, a hatred for it, to be honest with you, because I wasn't getting the help that I needed, because I was being treated like the other kids, and there was something wrong with me because I'm not learning at the same pace, at the same level as them. And I feel for those kids especially, because this is definitely a hard time for them. I can only imagine this would be a hard time for them once again, having to learn at home. And maybe it is easy to some sort because maybe they have a parent or a guardian who understands how they learn, who understands them, and they're able to better teach them. I have seen some people, I don't know these people personally, but I have seen some people online made comments saying that they've actually uh, seen more improvement of them teaching their child than, them teaching their child last year than they have seen their child make those improvements within the school system. So I
Mm.
think, I think for a lot of parents, they probably found out that maybe homeschooling is the best thing for my child. And for those parents, I tip my hat off to you and wish you the best, but um again, just like I was saying with just racism in general, the school system is another thing where it's not going to improve unless we actually tackle the real issues. Teachers definitely need to be paid more revered higher. um, the children need to be taught in not such a way that is not only outdated, but a way that is one dimensional, because not every child is the same. Not every child thinks the same. Not every child learns the same. Not every child is going to learn at the same pace, and this, that, and the third. So we have to improve on things of that of teaching, uh, uh, the kids, no matter the age, and even the adults in college. Same for the adults. Not every adult is the same. Not every college age student is the same. Learns the same. Everybody is different. So there needs to be an avenue to where every need, or at least close to every need, is being met. Because if you are only meeting the needs of, if you have a class full of 30 kids and only about, and 25 of those kids are getting their needs met, and the other five are just left in the dust, and then you say, well, that's that kid's, but those are those kids' problem. You need to catch up. If the majority of the class is doing fine, then surely y'all should do fine. You're in the same grade, you're the same age. It's not so black and white like that. There's something there that needs to be honed in and studied. And the information is out there for a lot of those kids. So it's not like a lot of the work has to be done. The work has been done. It's just the systems aren't the system isn't necessarily taking the time and resources to get these things done because of whatever reasons they feel as though they're not as important, um, but this is a time to where I just feel for the students and the parents especially, and the
Right.
teachers. And I can't really, I don't want to judge the school system too harshly, especially at a time like this. Definitely, they do need to improve, but they didn't ask for this. No teacher asked for this. No student. None of the parents definitely did not ask to not have to not make money, to have to live off savings for a couple of months just to go back to work and have their hours cut because of the lockdown restrictions still being in place, and their place of business is not open, till 12. It's closing at 8 now, and they work from 8 in the morning to 8 or whatever. But um, there has to be something to be done. Basically, we
Oh
can't just
yeah,
keep going. We can't just keep going at the same pace and hoping people to catch up. Of hoping things will get better, because it's
and
not.
speaking of catching up and everything, I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on, as a young person, about the penal system, because I know that's another thing that has been very much in the conversation. We've talked a little bit about the police system and the way the police treat our youth. But I was just wondering, as a young person, what is your thoughts about the school to prison pipeline and just the penal system in general and the way it impacts our society as a whole?
Yeah, it's still an issue. I see no light in this situation at all. And if I'm missing any good information or improvements, please feel free to share that with me. But it's I you still have black kids being treated as criminals whenever they have a tantrum. There's a story that there were stories actually too. There was a 16-year-old black girl who was slammed on her head because of a fight that she got into. There was the 9-year-old black girl because she got into it with her mom at home, and I believe that was somewhat school related as well. I think she was home because of something that happened at school. But then there's issues where there's a couple years ago, there's a teenage girl who was sleeping in class, and the teacher was telling her to get out the class, go to the police, not the police office, but might as well, but the principal's office.
But,
The school police came and drug her out by her hair, and I'm like, this is not how you treat, even if they were young black boys, young black girls. This is not how you treat teenagers, kids,
but,
9-year-olds, 16-year-olds, whoever. This is not how you treat them whenever they are expressing anger. And this idea that people who are younger than 18 aren't supposed to express anger. Sure, there are more mature ways, but do you really expect a 9-year-old girl to respond the same way a 29-year-old woman would respond when she is upset? You can't expect that. You can't expect a 16-year-old girl or boy to react the same way a 36-year-old man or woman would react when they are upset. Okay, now if you want to scold an adult for acting like a teenager or acting like a child when they're angry, that's a different story. But you
but,
can't. Then these are two things that are not the same. And even then, an adult gets angry at a police officer or someone else, they should not be treated as some dangerous criminal or some animal that needs to be put down and dropped on their head. And the 16-year-old girl, um, she suffered memory loss from that. She doesn't even remember the events that happened. 16 years old. She doesn't even remember what the events that happened. She just remembers waking up in a hospital and wondering what the hell happened to me? Like why am I in a hospital bed? So that's crazy. That's how hard she got dropped on her head. And that's unacceptable. Um, and time and time again, things like that happening, all there's outcry, but then nothing is actually being changed. It's just, well, we fired the cop because he was a school cop, or we put him back in a precinct, or we suspended them without pay, well, or with pay or whatever, because that's what they get basically. Um, that's or we're having sensitivity training. That's a one I always love laughing at when they say that. So it's like these things are clearly not working. The sensitivity training didn't work 4 years ago. It didn't stop cops from dragging people from their hair out of their desk and into the principal office or out of the school and into the back of a police car. It didn't stop them from macing a 9-year-old girl. It didn't stop them from dropping a 16-year-old who hopefully doesn't have permanent brain damage, but has suffered some brain damage because of the body slam. These things clearly aren't working, and we need to make a change. And yeah, when people bring up the school to prison pipeline, that is definitely true. That's definitely something that people, I think, try to deny because nobody wants to believe it. It's an ugly truth. And
yeah,
I say this all the time about things that are true, but not necessarily something that we don't want to be true. Simply because you want it to be true or not, you don't want it to be true, doesn't mean that it isn't true. This is not a fairy. It's not Cinderella where we can clap our shoes 3 times and the world is as perfect as we want it to be. These things are true, and we need to combat them and just not only have discussions about them, but take action against them. But even how the school is set up, like people could talk about how the school is set up, like somewhat of a prison or somewhat of a obedience type thing where you're doing something. You're in this confined area, I guess, for X amount of hours per day, and then you it's kind of like a job. It's like you're meant to obey, do your work, obey, do your work, and there's really no room for anything else or whatever. So I get the comparisons that people have between the two, and I think that they're valid points being made, and we need to improve on them. And like I was saying at the beginning of this comment, I don't see any light. I haven't seen any improvements, to be honest with you. So I mean, the only way I can see this improving is, once again, if we're really honest about what is going on here.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. We got to be honest and got to come up with honest solutions and all of that. Now, if folks are wanting to watch or read about your blog or your YouTube channel, I know you've got something called the Underdog TV and a number of other sources as well. So, how would folks learn about how to reach you and to communicate with you? And then, along those same lines, what have been some of the more thought-provoking blogs and or podcast episodes that you have had of your own so far?
All right. So, so with YouTube, yeah, you can find me Underdog TV Network. Underdog is spelled with two G's, but Underdog TV Network. Just type that in, and you'll find me on YouTube. As far as my podcast, you can find the podcast pretty much anywhere you can listen to podcasts: Spotify, Apple. When I talk about subject matters like this, that's the Earnest Thoughts podcast. So, Ernest spelled the way my name is spelled, and then thoughts, and then podcast. The podcast about music, it's just strictly music talk. That's the My 2 Cents podcast. So it's the word my, and then 2 cents is spelled out how, if you were to like write it down numerically. So the $ zero decimal 02. So the My 2 Cents, and then podcast. Again, you can find both of those podcasts, Spotify and other places where you can listen to podcasts as well. Blog, I write a blog on Medium. You can just type in Ernest Sandifer. You can find me there, or you can www.medium/ErnestSandifer.com, and then that's the medium where you can find my Medium blog. Now, as far as controversial takes, like I said, I'm just speaking my mind, but I guess the more controversial takes on either YouTube, well, I could say one for YouTube, because it really got me in trouble, at least a little bit of trouble. So when Donald Trump was taken off of social media and all that, I basically in a video said that I don't agree with his base. Once again, I don't agree with Donald Trump. Every chance I've gotten during his presidency, and still now, I take to trash him and everything he stood for and everything he did. But in that same light, I can look and say, this is a dangerous line that where we are cheering on, because if they can take him off social media like this, they can do this to anybody. And sure enough, they took my video off, and what YouTube basically said was, you lied and said we was going to do something we didn't do. And it's like, what do you mean? You did do it. Like, you're punishing me for exposing something, and with that punishment, you're actually giving me the punishment you said I said I was going to be punished for. I told you exactly what was going to happen to me, and you did it. And your excuse is, well, you said we were going to do it to you. That's why we're punishing you this way. That makes absolutely no sense. So, but apparently it makes enough sense for them to do that. So that's what happened with that video. So I guess that would be something super controversial. I guess a lot of my friends, family members in general, they tend to vote Democrat. And as someone who used to vote Democrat, of course, it makes them feel a way that, I'm very critical of the left, or just Democrats in general. And then here comes the assumptions that I'm a Trump supporter. I got a MAGA hat and everything. Absolutely not. Like, no. So it's like, then I have to once again make it clear that I also don't like him and all this other stuff. but I'm not going to sit by and stay silent and watch my side do all these wrong things, or not keep their word, or have these broken promises, or have these morals that I don't stand for, and ignore all of that because some of the good things they did was more beneficial to me than the other side. And it's like, that's not how I operate. So people feel a way about that, of course. And again, I'm not telling, I understand what you were saying before. Like, even if I don't consider myself a thought leader or thought whatever, it's kind of like something that even if people are exposed to all of that, they're going to, it's something that's going to be placed upon me. So I get that 100%, but I always let people know, even if that is the case, it's something that is placed upon me. I still don't think myself as this. I'm just someone who is out here. And the one thing that I want to do is just present my, not only my opinion, but present new information to people. That's the main thing. If it's new information to you, whether you like it or not, that's on you. But if it's new information to you and you got presented to it, then I did my job, because at least I did it. And you're not, this is information I don't think you're going to get from CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or whatever. So it's like, I'm just presenting the information that I feel as though needs to be presented. Again, you could feel however you want to feel about it. I think the uncomfortable thing is people, and I went through this myself, but I was less closed-minded about it. People don't want to believe that the truths that they thought were true, or the they don't want to understand that. Let me just go with what I was saying before. The truths that they thought were one, they don't want to believe that they were lies, or at least they're not as, I guess, peachy as they once thought it was. And that realization, it it sucks, to put it bluntly, because it's like you spent your entire life being taught this one thing, or being told this one thing, and to find out, wow, I was just not being lied to by family members and stuff, but necessarily being lied to by the government, or being lied to about whatever. Yeah, it's going to take some time to learn and move forward from that. So I understand why it hurts to learn these things, again, as someone who went through that myself. But the difference is, I had to tough it out, and I went through that pain. And now it's to the point where I am, um, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to stand for what I feel is right. I'm not taking a side. I don't even like to align myself with the people who do, who more so, I guess, agree with me or have the same stances, because even they will say some insane stuff or act in ways that I personally don't like. And when I get to criticizing them, I get the same treatment. So it's like, I don't belong to the left. I don't belong to the right. I don't belong to the middle. I belong to me. So it's like, that's just how I see it. But
It's
I guess
interesting you say that,
a
because
long
that's
time ago.
basically, yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because that's basically how this network started. Because everything, like I said, and I came on later on, like a month or two into
Yeah,
its existence. But when the pandemic first happened, Nick and Kim, and I believe Ankit, who's out of India, and a few others were hearing different stories about how this virus was coming around. So they were hearing it
yeah,
from other parts of the world before it even hit the United States and everything. So they decided they were going to create what originally was just, I think, a conversation around their learning about the news of the pandemic and presenting that to people on this platform. And definitely it then grew to them recruiting various shows and things of that nature. And I think that there's somewhere between 60 and 70 shows, and now continuing to grow. So basically creating what amounts to a network, a podcasting network with a variety of shows. Like I said, I do two of them on Monday nights. My friend Jatovi does a one on the video gaming industry on Thursday afternoon. My friend Zach does one about funk music and just life in general. A lot from our perspective, meaning the African American perspective, on Sunday afternoons. And then there are a number of other ones. There's even a young lady that does a show out of South Africa. She's a South African singer songwriter type, Alexandria May. Some people have compared her to Taylor Swift over there, and she was going back and forth between Nashville and South Africa. And I'm sure that as the world reopens, she hopes to do more of that again, because over the last year or so, she's been pretty much just pursuing her musical career there as much as she can there in South Africa. And then there's my friends that do their show Talking Upstream, which is basically them whiteboarding ideas. And I remember correctly, out of either Oregon or Washington, but one of the Pacific West states. And then Jeff, there's another gentleman, Jeff Eachin, and he does a show that is actually trying to get more of our prisoners out of situations because of them being in prison over nonviolent offenses. So he's very much of a weed activist, a marijuana activist. And so a lot of his show is revolving around that activism, but also trying to get people out for nonviolent offenses. And he's actually had success on that. So he does his show on Wednesday. And then there's a couple of stock market shows, some shows around podcasting, and a number of other things. So there's a couple of ladies that do kind of like a voice type show where they are just kind of like talking about issues, talking about their thoughts around a number of things, but also talking about wine, because the founder of that show and her daughter are winemakers. They have their own wine company,
nice.
Shoe Crazy, and things of that nature. And that's on Friday. And Dr. Tawana Anthony later on this evening will be doing her show, which is kind of about education and about general conversation. So there are a number of shows, and I've just named a few of them. I'm sure that can't forget my friend out of Nigeria with his Mind Closet, which deals with everything from spirituality to some of the things that they've gone through, including a Black Lives kind of movement there in Nigeria, because they've had some run-ins between their citizens and their police and everything. So they've talked about that as well. So that actually adds a whole nother component, because a lot of times when it happens here, well, sometimes it's our Black cops that are also acting up, but there you definitely have people that are of your same skin tone that are also suppressing you. But it's also not just a skin issue, but it's also a power issue as well. So definitely in the racism and the colonialism issues, as well as maybe some tribal issues that were involved as well. So that's just the way that a lot of similarities exist there, and everything between what it sounds like you're doing and what this network is all about. So and we'll definitely have to talk to them about you, and maybe see if we can get you to do some more regular things on our network and all, because I'm definitely liking your views, liking hearing your views, and I'm sure that a lot of the folks would love to hear more of what you've got to say as well. So we can hopefully continue that conversation and make that happen in the not too distant future as well. One of the things we talk about on a regular basis, and I want to come back to your music love, and I definitely, before getting off, wanted to get to the book, but with the music interest, we've actually run across that here on this platform, because YouTube will sometimes, if you play a cut or something, and you can even have the permission of the cut and everything, they will pull it. And I know that, like I said, my friend, and he's got two shows, one that he carried onto his own platform called Funk from the Front Seat, as well as the one he's now still doing on this platform, Funk Music with Zach. But Zach has actually had the permission of Bootsy and Bootsy's wife to run a certain song. Notice I said he had the permission of Bootsy, but even though he got the permission, because it is, not the permission from YouTube, they have still, given him strikes. They've given me strikes when I produced his show for him and everything. So sometimes you have to wonder, and I've even heard of people that have they've gotten strikes for using their own music. And that's right. I said they were using their own music and they've gotten strikes. I really think it's just totally insane. But I just wanted your thoughts about some of this, what amounts to almost music censorship by some of our platforms out there, whether that's YouTube, whether that's Twitter, or a number of other ones that may do similar kind of things. But I was just wondering, what are your thoughts about these kind of like ways that music is sometimes the people that should have the rights don't necessarily have the rights?
Yeah, I'm kind of like iffy on that. With situations like, if you got permission from the artist, like the Bootsy Collins gave you permission, hell yeah, I'm using his music, man. Like, yo, that's amazing. But if you get permission like that, there should, and YouTube, they're terrible with it, because they have bots taking care of all of that. It's not actual people. I'm pretty sure if an actual person were to say, well, I'm not pretty sure, but like if they were to look at it and say, okay, Bootsy Collins did give this person permission. Oh, this is actually this person's music. Okay, let me take off this strike. Okay, let me not put this strike on in the first place. What they have is these automated bots who run these tests and they're going through everybody's videos, and especially if you have music that you didn't download from the the content creation tool on YouTube. If you don't have music from there, then they automatically flag your stuff, and I think that is insane. I get it. Back in my when I first started doing YouTube, I was like learning things on the fly. So I was using people's music without permission because I was thinking it was on the internet. I can have access to it. So I would just put music in my videos, and I've gotten strikes and channels taken down because of that. And once it was explained to me, I understood that side. I understood. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I could have gotten in serious trouble. I got off really light compared to the thousands, billions of dollars I could have owned, the jail time I could have gotten simply because I used licensed music that I didn't have the license to use. So I got off pretty light with those strikes and channels being taken down. So I get that side of it, and for anyone who doesn't know that, learn from me. You don't want your channels taken down, so at least get permission from the record label or the artist. But I do think they are being too stiff with it, because once again, you are having this. If you're gonna have something like this, have people be in charge. Have people be in charge of all this stuff, not just robots and that are just gonna flag things because they're programmed to flag things that fit into a certain category, because there's nuances, like getting permission from the artists themselves, like the artists actually putting their own music within those videos. So these are things that their robots aren't programmed to know. They're not going to say, okay, this is the music artist, this is the music. No. So it's like YouTube could do better. YouTube, yeah, people could do, like myself, I could have done better years ago. This was like freshman year of college, so years ago. But like, I could have done better with knowing about music licensing and this, that, and the third. So I will hold people accountable for that side. But for the technical side of it, that's definitely all on YouTube. They have the power. It's not us going in and giving ourselves flags and taking down our own channels because of the music and saying, nah, because if that was the case, we would just remove the video and upload it without said music in it,
No, I definitely
instead
agree
of
with you on
taking,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, one of the other things I was going to add to you and everything, and I was just wondering your thoughts on this along the same lines, but still dealing with the music side of the industry. But it's a political thing with music. Is I've actually worked in radio for a number of years. My folks, when I was a teenager, started a community radio station, so I've been involved in radio and festivals probably for close to 40 plus years and everything of that nature. So I do know that there was a time that radio was a lot more community oriented. I'm thinking about like even
Yeah.
back in the days of like the Wolfman Jackson in New York and the great DJs that were fixtures of society almost as much as the artists and things of that nature. But now it's very corporate, and it's very corporate in the sense that there's
Yeah.
only 3 or 4 entities that pretty much control the radio stations, whether that's Radio One, whether that's Clear Channel, and the same thing can said before the coronavirus about the performance venues. Quite a few of those were Live Nation and maybe 1 or 2 of Live Nation's smaller competitors and things of that nature. But I was just wondering, what are your thoughts about, one, do you think that it's going to open up? Because I've heard some artists think that because of coronavirus, that there's going to be more greater opportunities because, they are definitely having to create content and do the content themselves. So it may open us up to more independent artists
Mm.
actually getting more national and international appeal and all of that. And that it may break to some degree a little bit of that radio chokehold that has been out there by the commercial folks and things of that nature. Now, some folks may think that that's being overly optimistic, but I was just wondering, as one that has studied the music industry, what your thoughts are.
I want to side more so with the overly optimistic side, because that is something that I want to see happen. I want to see more artists, whether I'm a fan of them or not, whether I listen to that genre faithfully or, sometimes I want them to be more independent. I hope that this pandemic taught the music artists that, hey, I can actually create these things and do these things by myself. And sure, I thought I couldn't do these things without the label, but I'm seeing that I can do it. So why am I giving all of my money? Because essentially the money that the labels are making, the artist is the one who can make all that money for themselves, and all that that time. Shouldn't take a lot of time to do all that, but I can do all this stuff and be my own boss essentially. That's something that I want to see in the future. And I don't know if I can say too much if that will or will not happen. I still have to keep like a closer ear into what's going on within the music industry right now. All you hear, or at least from the last time I tried to pay like much attention to it, it's discussions about Taylor Swift's contract or Britney Spears' contract, and things of that nature. And I feel as though they share that negative stuff to try to scare the music artists and say, well, all the news that's coming out about these artists is negative news, and we're not going to show you the good stuff. But if there are artists out there who are actually making it and finding a way and saying, you know what, I don't need this label, that definitely needs to be highlighted, and that's definitely something that needs to be celebrated. And I'm all for it, whether it's too optimistic in some people's eyes. If it's possible, it's possible. And one of my favorite sayings is, when there's a will, there's a way. So as long as they continue fighting for it, I believe that it will happen.
Now, I definitely agree with you on that. It will happen. Hopefully, it will happen more of and things of that nature. Now, the other thing I'm hearing about, and I was wondering, because I also have mixed feelings about this, but
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering your thoughts and everything, is that because of the pandemic that we're in the middle of, that we're going to see more of kind of like the Michael Jackson hologram concerts, meaning that it'll be kind of a mixture of a
Yeah,
hybrid and a mixture of you being at home and everything of that nature. And definitely for folks that remember the Michael Jackson hologram concert, that was shortly after his death, and it was like a concert where basically folks came to see him perform, but they were watching a hologram of him on the
yeah,
stage and things of that nature and all of that. And the same can be said even now with this hybrid version, where if you're only allowed, say, in a 2,000 seat theater to hold 500 people, that you go ahead and you get those 500 tickets probably at a higher price ticket. And we already know that price tickets were already high as it was. So
yep,
let's say the tickets were $75. Now they're going to be $150 for those 50 people. And then the rest of the crowd will be the ones that get the ticket probably at a much more economical price, because you can only charge with so much on the internet and everything. So maybe for $25 or $30, they get to see it on a streaming outlet and all of that, because I know there are a couple of those that are out there, like Aventive and a number of other ones. So is that the direction that you think we're going to be in for the next 3 to 4 years, where it's going to be kind of like a hybrid performance? I would even argue, and I heard you mention earlier, that instead of watching the Grammys, you were watching the Celtics play. And I definitely remember rooting for them back when Doc Rivers was their coach, because I,
hey,
I kind of like followed them. I kind of like followed my basketball according to individuals, whereas I have certain teams that I root for in football. So like football, I root for the Minnesota Vikings. Baseball, I root for the Milwaukee Brewers.
yeah,
Basketball, I root for wherever Doc Rivers and some of my other Marquette Warrior alumni are at and everything of that nature. So right now I'm rooting for Philadelphia. And I know
yeah,
that that's not something that you want to hear, being a Boston Celtics fan, but definitely, I think that Jay Crowder was playing for y'all for a minute. So I think I was rooting for
yeah,
the Celtics a couple
yeah.
of times because of Jay and everything. But definitely, I was just wondering, do you think that whether it's sports, like I know that they're talking about the NCAA all being held in the state of Indiana at different courts, or because of the nature of entertainment, that for the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see this hybrid model of entertainment where you get to see part of the audience if you're lucky and you got that $150 to $200, or you get to watch it from home, maybe for 30 or 40 or maybe 50 or 60.
Oh man, I see it going that way, and I'm gonna sound like, I guess, the grumpy old person. I don't want it to go that way. I want things to be the same, like the traditional way. I'm a traditionalist in certain aspects, and the whole concert going experience, and just, and I know it's unsafe now. I understand that, but just that experience is something I don't want to ever go away, ever. So it's like when I see something, and I know we have to advance and adapt and all that, some situations where it's like, no, we have to stay the same. It's one of those situations. Um, I but I do. It's funny because I was just watching a video, and I saw an ad, and I don't know this performer, but she was in the studio, and she had like the one of those body suits with the balls and the lights all over her, and in the background, the green screen and all that, whatever it's called, the CGI, it was her like on this stage performing for people to tune in to see, but she wasn't necessarily really on a stage. She was just in some studio with covered in a suit, and they did their little computer magic and made it look like she was there. So I saw that and I was like, I don't know if I can get with this. Like, and it has zero to do with the performer or the performance or anything. I thought the performance looked well. I think it looks really cool from an aesthetic standpoint. It looks really cool, but from someone who enjoys that experience, that human contact experience, I can't really support it. But I do see it being a future, and I hope that it's another thing as so it's a bad thing about this virus. It's like it took away a lot of great just I guess things about humanity, just people coming together, and you can meet a lot of great people at concerts, and it's like you take that component away. Sure, you can listen to music anywhere, but just that camaraderie and just getting to know people. Yeah, it's a bad thing.
No, I'm totally with you on that, Ernie, because I can tell
Yeah.
you that it's one that is done, and I've done them now for probably decades now. I've done several of our local festivals and everything, and I did two of those festivals virtually this year. So our street festival, which is called Centerfest here in Durham, was done virtually. And I did like a historical opening. So I did like some narration and everything for that historical opening, and then the Eno Festival, which is kind of like a Mother Nature Earth kind of festival, but also it's very folk oriented and things of that nature. And it's actually at one of our state parks and everything. That is usually, like you said, in person, and usually I'm emceeing,
Yeah.
talking to different folks, walking around, seeing the different artists, seeing things of that nature. And we did it virtually. That was one of the virtual parts was taped, and that's the part that I was involved in. So we taped at a local theater, and then the actual day of the virtual performance, I got to see that part that I taped maybe a week or two earlier, in addition to what they were doing live, but still virtual and everything. And it's not the same. It's not the same when you maybe mingling around with 10 or 15 of the folks that you're there working with versus mingling around with thousands and, seeing old friends that you might only see doing those festivals and things of that nature, or that you don't see as often as you would like. So it's very much of that kind of a reunion kind of feel that a lot of times people will kind of like compare festivals to college homecomings and things of that nature, because a lot of times they're once a year, or in some cases like the National Black Theater Festival, which is hopefully going to happen this year because it's every odd year. They're once every 2 years or so, whatever the time frames are that they exist. But it's very much of that festival atmosphere, very much of that human connection. And you're right. While we knew we had to do virtual this year, it's not the same. It doesn't have the same flavor, and a lot of the things aren't the same kind of human connection that we as humans definitely need on a regular basis. So I'm with you on the fact that if it has to be virtual, I understand that, and I know that even the Eno, because I actually was contacted by them a couple of weeks ago, are contemplating it being virtual again this July, because it's always held around 4th of July weekend and things of that nature. Centerfest is in September, so hopefully that will definitely not be virtual. Hopefully we'll begin having whatever we're going to do with herd immunity by that time. So I haven't heard any plans on that, but I do know that Centerfest was definitely looking at that, and I do know that we just finished two film festivals that usually would be in person, but they were both done virtually and everything. And even that, I mean, that's something that's more of a it's not as much uh, like roaming around kind of interaction, because you're still in the seats and everything. But even that, it's not the same virtually as it is being at the theater and having the direct contact. For one, you can't have the direct contact with the filmmakers. Like I said, it's one thing to see them online, like we're doing right here, you in Massachusetts and me here in North Carolina, as opposed to, being able to like talk to them, have a more direct conversation with them, go out and have a glass of beer afterwards and everything, and actually have that more human interaction. So I'm with you. I'm hoping that we're going to see more of the old-fashioned kind of festivals, but I am hearing more and more that we're going to be stuck in a hybrid model for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I understand, but I just hope that's not the future. For the next 3 to 5 years, I can. I won't say yeah, I'm 100% on board, but I'm not gonna complain about it. But if it's anything longer, yeah, I'm gonna like scream and shout about
No, I definitely understand it, screaming and shouting and all of that. And like I said, I got about another 15 minutes, and I promised that we were going to get to the book. So I definitely want to learn more about the book in the
it.
next 15 minutes. And then I've always got something that I ask my guests every at the end of just about every interview, and it's a very quick question, which is kind of like their word of encouragement. And you've actually been given quite a few of those during the course, but this is more specific. But tell us about the book and the style of the book and the definitely whether it definitely did not sound like the typical urban novel. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about your new book or newer book and what you were going for in that particular book. And I've got to get a copy of it at some point.
Hey, appreciate that. So, I mean, it really depends on the person if they want to call it urban or not. It is a mob story, so it's called Late Nights on Broadway, and pretty much it's drama and it's comedy, and there's other elements to it as well, and it's about these three feuding mob families as well. So you have one family that is well, two of the main mob families that are Italian mob families, and they have control over this city, or the majority of the control over Broadway is the city, is what I named it. The one black family is they hold control over pretty much one specific area of the entire city, but not the entire city. So one mob family portrays the other one, and he's basically trying to take over all of the businesses and pretty much all of the city for himself and his mob family. The son of the other family finds out, and he goes to his father, who is the leader of the other Italian mob family. He tells his dad. His dad tells the son to find more information so he can then address this to the other mob boss. His name is Ray Pacino. So uh, Francis's son goes to the black mob, and he tries to get them to do his bidding basically, and lets them know, hey, um, uh, there's I need you to find proof that this one Jamaican club called the Get Up Club, and basically I need you to prove that Ray Pacino owns this club, and it's not necessarily owned by the Jamaican man who initially owned the club. So, the black mob family. They're feuding because not within each other, but there's one person in the family who's like, okay, we have to do this work, and we need the money, this, that, and the third. And there's another person he's like, I'm tired of basically working for these white people, and they're going to just kill us anyway, and they've already done bad for us, and all this, that, and the third. And we need to use this as an opportunity because they're feuding. We need to use this as an opportunity to basically get our freedom, and it's pretty much a story of, and like I said, it's portrayal. It's not just the two mob families betraying one another, but there is a love interest between one mob family and the black mob family. There's a betrayal that happens there. There's betrayals that happen within the family, and there's just an all-out war as well. Like I said, all my stories are from dreams, so it's like I had a dream about this, and I will say, what inspired this was kind of like one of my favorite movies, Harlem Nights.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just this didn't happen after I watched Harlem Nights. I remember waking up. I was like, this kind of in a way reminded me of Harlem Nights. So there are a little bit of elements of that, but I didn't completely take from the story. The ending is totally different from Harlem Nights. There's everything about it, everything else, other than the fact that there's mobs and mob families feuding, is literally different from Harlem Nights. The only similarities is, again, you have mob families, and you have the race element as well. But that's about it. So yeah, it's I think it's a really great story. And I know I have to say it, or because I wrote it, but I read it from time to time. I'm like, this is really, really a really great story. So it's like I can't wait to other people to tell me about it. how they feel
Well, it
about
sounds like a great story. It also sounds like it could be a story made into a movie. And I've actually got a
it.
good
Yeah.
friend of mine, Ronnie Warner, that actually did the film this Christmas. So I've got a couple of friends, including Petrie Bird, who is the bailiff on Judge Judy. So there are a few friends that I know in the Hollywood industry. So depending on when I read it and how I feel about it, I might have to see what they think about it as well. Because I know Ronnie has been on this show. And like I said earlier, Zach Wiseman and Dylan, I'm trying to think of Dylan's last name, but they do the whiteboarding story. And part of what they do is they have their own a whole bunch of movie ideas, and these are two European Americans and everything, but their ideas and their collaborators have been from all parts of society and all of that. So they are always open to creating not just their ideas, but helping others create ideas as well. So they do their show talking upstream here on this platform. So there might be some avenues for getting it made into a movie. And I know one of the things we just recently did, meaning this network, is we just recently got the website blockbuster.tv or something like that. So basically we have the websites for the old Blockbuster movie chains and all of that. And one of the hopes is that they're going to put movies up on the screen and everything, because we now have a whole platform that you were able to see these episodes in the past. And we
Yeah.
also have a store that has different ones of our products. Like I think there's a t-shirt that I have, as well as a couple of coffee mugs and some different other products. And some of the other shows have products as well. And then we also have a investor, the Dollar Store, and I think that eventually they'll be tied there as well. So there's some marketing opportunities for your book and all of that. So we just have to figure out how that will work. But first, I've got to read the book. But one thing I was going to tease you about is the old saying is that, and I know it's an old kind of like I don't call it a wives' tale, but that you can't really write something unless you've lived it. And it sounds to me like you haven't necessarily lived the mob life, and it doesn't sound like you have any friends in your family that have lived the mob life, or maybe you have. So, what do you say to those folks that would tell you that it's hard to write about something unless you've actually lived it? Not that I know that Mario Puzo lived the Godfather life, but I just don't
Right.
know what your thoughts are about those that will argue that you have to have had some sort of experience in what you write about in order to write about it.
Oh man. Well, a funny thing about that comment is there's always a character or something about specific characters in all my stories that is actually a part of me. So even if I can't relate to, the lifestyle that this character is sharing or whatever, I put myself in, and I don't make it clear. I always leave it up to the reader and for them to decide or to make the decision. And if they ask me, I can confirm or deny, if it's that's the case. But as far as that saying goes, uh, what's the point in having an imagination if you can't explore other avenues and all that? I think that's the beauty of art. I think that if you are just writing, and there's nothing wrong about just simply writing about your experiences. I have blog posts about my experiences. All my thoughts and everything are due to my experiences. So it's not like I'm not writing about my experiences at all. But I just didn't want to. My first book was a self-help book, and when I first decided I wanted to be an author, I didn't necessarily want to write stories because I had that same idea. Honestly, I was like, I don't want to write about things because with stories you have to then make it up and this, that, and the third. And it's like if I were to write a story, it'd be about my life, and that's it. And the only thing I would be able to write about is my experiences. And the self-help book was the based off of the negative things I've done in relationships and just the relationship advice that I would give to myself if I could go back in time. So, that's why I created that book. And that was why I first started. But then it got to the point where, again, I want to detail a message within every story, not just for the. And it's fun, to be honest with you, to write these stories. So it's like I'm not going to stop because I didn't live the mob life, but and not every book is going to be about that. But I can tell you right now, I have a story about two cops. It's in the works and stuff, and I'm not a police officer. And there's the race. There are two black cops. One's a black woman. One's a black man. There's the race element of okay, what we're doing as black police officers and what's expected of us and all that other stuff. So I think that you don't necessarily have to experience something 100%. I get that where that comment is coming from, but if you can either have use your imagination, or you can tap into something that is at least close to, you know, whatever story that you're creating, it's better to do that to me than for me than to just lie about a story. Now, I granted, if someone was like, yeah, I lived this life and I wrote this story about it, and it's like, no, it wasn't. This is not your life story at all. So I can understand why someone would have a problem with that. But that's the case within the music industry as well. That's in the case with if someone made a movie about their life, but then you find out that movie is nothing like how their life was like, right? So you
So
know,
kind of like some of those rappers out there that are doing the gangster rap songs, but have never once spent a day of their life in Compton. We won't name any names, but we know that there's some out there that portray that
I love
persona of
Tupac.
being
Yeah,
a
yeah,
gangster, but
yeah.
they've never spent a day in Compton or a day in Harlem or a day in Cabrini Green over there in Chicago or any of the other great hood neighborhoods that
Yeah.
exist in our country. But if you listen to their hardcore rap songs, you would swear up and down that they lived in these neighborhoods. But then when you learn about their history, you find out that they lived like right outside of Beverly Hills or lived like in the rich suburbs and all of that. So I'm very familiar with those kind of folks that put up that persona and it's not the truth about the actual life that they live. Now, you're a young person, and of course, like I said earlier, I'm in my late 50s and everything, and I'm still part of that single crowd and everything. So, what kind of advice did you give folks? Because sometimes I think that I need to give advice as well, but then I'm not sure that I want to give advice to a younger me or even an older me and everything because I'm still making some of the same mistakes probably that I made
Oh
then,
wow.
even now.
So yeah, that'd be my first advice is you have to learn from them first in order to give that advice. And that's why I felt comfortable putting that book out. Cause it's like this is stuff that I learned from. But some of the advice I gave in that book was basically uh it's about relationships, but I think the underlining message of it was about self-love. I mean, not
Mhm.
getting into relationships because you feel like you need to be in one in order to feel like you are a person. A lot of the mistakes that I've made in the past was just either settling for certain relationships or getting into staying in certain relationships or just getting into one with just the wrong women simply because I just felt as though that I needed to, like, this is what a man is supposed to do. You're a young man, you're a teenage boy. Like, how do you not have a girlfriend yet? How do you still a virgin at 16? And how all that stuff. So like it was just, and even after those situations, like I detailed my first time losing my virginity at 17, and I hated it because it was like it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do. And if I could go back, I would tell myself it don't matter what she was saying. Oh, you're about to be 18. She turned 18 that day, and I was going to turn 18 a few months later. And it's, oh, don't you want to not be a virgin at 18? I don't want to be a virgin at 18. So it's like it's like just to love yourself, because again, if you have that self pride, that self love, no matter what anybody else says, um, you just got to be you and do you. And whenever you're ready to move forward in whatever stage, relationship wise or just individual stage in life, you do it at your own pace, because if you don't, you're going to find in situations to where you are hating the individual or hating yourself even more. Find yourself in situations you might not want to be in, like maybe you got someone pregnant, or you got pregnant because you felt like you needed to do this thing, or you lost some money because you felt the need, you needed to look a certain way or live a certain lifestyle to be in this relationship, or she was pressuring you to spend all this money on her because that's how she wanted to know how much you loved her or cared for her and stuff. So Yeah,
It's
things done
interesting.
it.
It's interesting you say that because definitely I was just a part of a group called Daybreakers, which is if you know about the dance community, they're the ones that were doing those day parties and everything. And then of course, like everything else in the world, they pivoted it. So I actually found them in the pivot. So like I said, I found Rada and her husband and a couple of others. But they were doing these global dance parties. But I've become friends of theirs and have actually joined like their clubhouse on Facebook and a couple of other things. And there was a couple of young ladies, including one that was very much struck by the grief that she was going through because she had just broken up, and I want to say she might have been in her late 20s or maybe early 30s, and she was talking about the grief that she was going through in that breakup. And part of the advice that most people were giving her is just what you said, which is kind of like to be comfortable with yourself. They
Right,
know why you were breaking up with that person, but also be comfortable with the decision that you were making. And I can also agree with what you said about a lot of times, even as a man that is now, in the 50s, that's definitely considered middle age. And I can tell you that even in middle age, and I would even argue that I have some friends in their 70s that are still
yeah,
in the dating sphere, and definitely some in their 30s that are in the dating sphere. And in all of those different generations, a lot of times we get too caught up in settling, even way up
yeah,
until you go to the grave and everything. You get into that whole settling mindset where you in your mind know that the person is not for you, that they're probably not the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with and everything. But at the same time, you're going like, but I can't have the A-lister that I want, so I'm going to settle for the B-lister or the C-lister. And in the back of your mind, you're like, but I really don't want this person. So you
right,
don't give them the full attention that they deserve either, because in your mind, you're not really ready to put 100% into it because you don't really have the same kind of feelings that they may have for you. So I think that that's something that goes on from generation to generation and can
yeah.
go all the way from, I would argue, probably from cradle to grave.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So
Um,
that's something you definitely have to do on a regular basis. I know we're getting to wind up, and one of the things I always have all my guests do, and I definitely want you to come back. As I tell all my guests, always glad to have people come back on whenever they're available. And like I said, we do a variety of these shows on. I do two on Monday on this platform, as well as one on Wednesday, and then I do the producers roundtable on Sunday. So I'll be keeping in touch with you, and anytime that you're available and you want to jump into our various conversations, know you do have a home here and everything. But one of the things I was going to ask you that I try to get all my guests to give me a thought of is a word of positivity that they would like to share with our global community, because this is a global platform, and there's definitely folks that are watching from around the globe, whether that's Malaysia, whether that's South Africa, whether that's England, whether that's Jamaica, or a number of other places, definitely within the United States and without the United States as well. So any
yeah.
words of encouragement or words of positivity that you would like to leave with our audience as we get to wrap up this particular episode of the radio show with Mark Lee?
Hey, thanks for having me. I really, really, really appreciated being on. Uh, Words of encouragement, I would have to say, love yourself, and I don't just mean like for like future relationships or if you're in a relationship. I mean in all facets, because going back to like politics or anything else, I think that people who love themselves, um like we always attribute that to just being kind to yourself and all that, that is true, but that also means being your advocate, your biggest advocate. um that's part of loving yourself. When something is not going right within yourself or your community, and you're seeing things, speak up. That's part of loving yourself, and doing so, you also not only inspire other people to love themselves, but you're actually loving other people as well. Because if you decide to speak up against an injustice, speak up against something, or stand up and say, I am going to live my life this way, this helps out everybody else in your community and others around you, um, because they see that it can be done. One of my favorite sayings, and I have it. I'm gonna put it on in like a T-shirt. I think I did. I put it on like one of the T-shirts that I make. But it's I am living proof. So I kind of want to switch it up to that. And what I basically mean by that is, however, whatever life that you live, because there's always going to be people saying you can't do that because of this, you can't do that because you're a woman, because of all this, or you can't be this way because you're this. Um, don't listen to those voices. Don't listen to those people. You be you and show the world, show everybody that you're living proof that you can be this person. As I was alluding to before, I am a black writer that can write about these things. I'm living proof that it can be done. You know, a woman is living proof that she can conquer all of these things. A black person is living proof that he or she can do these things without, you know, even with all the obstacles in the way. You know, person who is bound by a wheelchair is living proof that they can accomplish things that they're told they can't do it because they're not able-bodied. You know, so it's just whatever lifestyle that you live, whoever you are, just wear that with pride that you're living proof that it can be done. Whether you're someone who, you know, is working for yourself or someone who is doing whatever you're doing. Show the world that you're living proof, and keep doing you. And that's part of self-love.
Yep, and definitely it sounds like me. You've definitely been doing that on a great basis and everything. If you want to give folks just one more time how they can reach you on social media, I'm sure that folks will definitely be writing those down. And then after you give that, then I'll hit these theme song, which is also the outro song as well. But definitely let folks know one more time how they can reach you via social media.
All right, so I'm on Twitter at you love Ernest. It's spelled you underscore and then love and the underscore again and then Ernest. Um, all that is, you know, spelled how it should be spelled. That's the same for Instagram as well. So Twitter and Instagram are the same. You can find me on Facebook, Ernest Sandifer. That's where you can find me. Late Nights on Broadway. You can find that book on Amazon. You can either type in the title Late Nights on Broadway, or if you message me on social media, I'd be glad to send you a link to where you could buy the book. You'll find that link pretty much anywhere on my social media platforms anyways as well. YouTube, once again, Underdog TV Network, Underdog spelled with 2 G's, but Underdog TV Network. Go there, subscribe, appreciate that. For the podcast, once again, Ernest Thoughts Podcast. That's more so of the political / pop culture podcast. That is on Spotify, Anchor, Apple podcasts, anywhere you could, a lot of places where you can find podcasts. Same for the My Two Cents podcast, which is the music-based podcast. I review albums there. I talk about the music industry. I talk about music in general there. So My Two Cents podcast, once again, spelled my and then two is the way you would spell it if you were to write it down numerically. And then podcasts, find that podcast, the same places you can find the Earnest Thoughts podcast. And if people wanted to email me personally, sandifer91@gmail.com. That's where people could, email me if you don't have any of the other social networks or anything. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from people. And once again, I appreciate you for having me on this show. I really, really enjoyed my time here.
No, definitely enjoyed having you on. You were a great guest. Definitely enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to having more conversations with you. I can already tell you I have subscribed to the Underdog TV network,
Yes.
and I will be ordering the book later on this afternoon or no later than tomorrow. So I will be ordering my copy of that book, since it can't cost but so much and won't take but so much of a dent of that stimulus check that I did get. So
Only
I figure
$5.
I can figure I can support you for $5.
Appreciate it.
Sounds great. So definitely look forward to seeing you come back on in the near future. And we're going to get out of here with the theme song. Appreciate you for being on.
Appreciate your path.